And we are live. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Bassin Magazine podcast. Bassin Magazine, guys, Bassin is the official magazine of the weekend angler. We are very excited here at Bassin Magazine. First of all, my name is Jay Angel. I'm going to be your podcaster. Brad Yule from Bassin Magazine, of course. And we have a very special guest from one of my favorite places in the world.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I love the state of Wisconsin. And one of the places I love most in the state of Wisconsin is Door County, Wisconsin, which, of course, to me means smallmouth bass. When I think of smallmouth bass, of course, I think of Bill Schultz. How are you doing tonight, Bill?
Hey, Jay, I'm doing well. And Brad, nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you, too. Thanks for coming on our show.
Hey, when you've got 30-mile-an-hour winds and sleet and snow outside, this is a great place to be.
Awesome.
Yes. Inside.
Yeah. And you don't, so the weather's been kind of weird this winter, right? You don't have a freeze over yet.
No, in fact, most of the guides in Door County basically had no season.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's open water up there.
Yeah. Oh. So does that hurt? I mean, obviously economically that hurts, but does that hurt the fishing, or does that make next year's freeze better, the spring better?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
I know Jay's got some other things he wants to start out with here, and then we'll.
Well, you have confidence lures. That's one of the things we like to talk about here on the Bassin Magazine podcast is confidence. I like your approach to fishing. I like it. And Brad, you're going to see why. Why don't you tell us about your approach to smallmouth bass fishing?
Well, we've all heard the KISS method.
Yes.
Keep it simple. And in my case, it's keep it simple Schultz.
Schultz, I like it.
And, to be honest with you, when I do my talks at the shows, when I write articles, when I do things like this, the underlying theme is to try to get to the products that work, catch a lot of smallmouth bass, save people money and time, and produce. And I literally, as Jay knows, having caught and released my first smallmouth bass in May of 1994, and as of November 8th, I was at 30,162. And number 25,000 came on August 4th of 2021. And 14 months and 6 days later, on October 10th, number 30,000. So, and I can tell you that, certainly I've tried different things, but I've used very few lures. If I go literally the last 2 years have been pretty incredible. They were my best year ever for numbers. And I'm living in Wisconsin, so I'm fishing from early May through early November usually. So I'm missing half the year. And over this time span of 29 years, sometimes 50 days on the water, 60, 70. The last 2 years I've been on the water, all are part of 96 and 97 days. So not a ridiculous amount. And what I try to do is, I don't tournament fish, but I'm competitive. I swam at the University of Wisconsin. I'm in the Racquetball Hall of Fame here in Wisconsin. And for me, my competition is, my catching and releasing a lot of smallmouth bass. And the underlying theme is also taking very good care of them. I don't want to have any fish die on me. So except for literally one lure, and the trebles on that lure are tiny. Yes. Every fish I've caught for years and years and years have been on one hook. And so if you look at the last 2 years, my best year ever was 2007. And that was a great river year. I did just like 2,100 smallmouth. And again, some of you are going to laugh, and I have no problem with this. Obviously, I've kept a log, and I get asked all the time, how do you keep track of all those fish? And I like to joke, I wrote an article a few years ago about keeping a fishing log. And I started off saying, I grew up with my dad running the YMCAs in Madison, Wisconsin. And I remember those big weightlifters in that little crummy little weight room, keeping track of their workouts in a little notebook. And then I swam at Wisconsin, and I kept track of the yardage on little 3x5 cards in my wallet. And then, almost 50 years of racquetball, I kept track of just the dates, who I played, a couple comments. So of course, when I got back into fishing, I'm going to keep a log. And it's about as simple can be a date, a location, whether I'm waiting in my boat or in a kayak, the number of smallmouth, the few other fish I catch. If I'm on a river, I keep track of fish that are 2 pounds or bigger. The other place I primarily fish for smallmouth is Door County, Wisconsin. There, it's fish that are 4 pounds or bigger. And so that's why I can rattle off some of these numbers. But the last 2 years, 6,007 smallmouth, hitting 25,000 in 2021 and 30,000 last year, is fun. The majority of those 6,000 plus smallmouth, almost 5,000, came while I was wearing my waders in small rivers across southern Wisconsin. And I mentioned, a few lures. And I know, Brad, I've been told you're going to be excited about this, but in about 1995, I had access to a pond west of my house here. And I bought at Gander Mountain a Rebel teeny wee crawfish.
Yeah, ultra.
I remember the doctor that owned the property standing up by his house. I made my first cast with it. I caught 2 bluegills, and I'm thinking, this is pretty cool. So it was that very year that I began using it on small rivers in southwest Wisconsin. And I haven't kept track of how many smallmouth I've caught on the teeny wee crawfish. The people at Rebel do think I've maybe caught more than anyone else. I'm going to say conservatively about 6,000 just on the teeny wee crawfish. And guys, I've got, variety of colors. It's a great little lure. If you notice, the front treble is what they come with. It's a number 14. And about 8 or 9 years ago, I began changing out the back treble to a number 10. The reason is, and here's the tip for everybody, the number 14s in a river, they bend and break, and even 9, 10, 11-inch fish will pull off those small trebles. So that little bigger treble, again, it doesn't really damage the fish, but you get better hookups. So I've been using the teeny wee crawfish all these years, always have it on a rod when I'm waiting. I have to say the last 2 years, it's even made a little bit of a resurgence for me. It's been phenomenal. So that is always one of my very few go-to lures, and primarily in the rivers. And it's a 2 to 3 foot diver. And most of the rivers I'm fishing are 1 to 3 feet deep. So the cool thing is it swims nose down, vibrates like crazy, and the fish can't resist it. And the neat thing is, if you hit the bottom or something that it could snag on, if you just let up, it'll float right back to the top. Yep. So a phenomenal lure. This happens to be brown and chartreuse. These 2 colors are 2 other favorites. One is stream craw and one is ditch brown. But it's a great lure. And just so I don't just keep going on with things, Brad or Jay, did you want to ask me about the teeny wee crawfish?
Yeah, I have a question. Now when you excuse me. Jeez, so many messages. When you switched out those hooks, did you notice any change in the action of the lure?
That's a great question, and I'll tell you why it's a great question. I noticed no difference in the wiggle, the extreme tight vibration. What you do notice, though, instead of floating a little faster to the top, it almost becomes a suspending lure because that little extra weight holds it down a little bit. So now if you're a person that likes to jerk, pause, it's going to just sit there. I will tell you that my way of fishing it has always been cross current or against the current to get extra wiggle. That's how I fish it. This year, for the first time, takes me a while, I did fish it a little bit with the current, jerk, and pause, very successful. I did want to say too, and this is something where I think a lot of people make a mistake, and I'm holding right here 4 of the series with St. Croix, and you have everything from $120 to $675. You've got the Bass X, you've got the Mojo, you've got the Legend X, and you've got a Legend Extreme. All of them are 6'10", medium light, extra fast. That is the only rod I use for my river fishing. And I will tell you that I've been out with, I always take 2 rods. I've been out with a expensive Legend Extreme, which is phenomenal, but the other rod is $120 Bass X, which is also tremendous. So obviously I'm involved with St. Croix and have been for a long, long time, 25 years now. And all of their series have these, like the 6'10", 7-foot medium light extra fast. I like it because that rod can throw the teeny wee crawfish. It's only 1/10 of an ounce. It also can throw the other things even better that I'm also going to talk about.
What size line are you using?
I'm using Brad 10-pound. Mostly I'm using Daiwa J-Braid 8X. And I have to tell you, one of the things I like to joke, I like music from the 60s, and one of the songs by the Rolling Stones called Mama's Little Helper, the first line of it is, "What a drag it is getting old." Well, one of the drag things about getting old is with the eyesight, and it's interesting. I know you know my friend Dale Stoshine, and last year Dale and I back-to-back talks at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel Sports Show, and we both talked about using, and I'm going to grab one. There's the Chartreuse J-Braid X. I like either the white, for example, Fireline or Nanofill, but I primarily use the Chartreuse in the J-Braid because I can see the line. And I also, 100% of the time, going back to 2007 with the Clearwaters in Sturgeon Bay, every single application I use, I'm using 8 or 10-pound fluorocarbon with a 3 or 4 foot leader using the uni to uni knot. And I first honestly learned this when I started fishing the Kalin's lunker grub in 2007 up there. And I just, even in, stained water, I just said, what the heck? I find it to be something I'm comfortable with. And that's what I use. I use, and I even use the 10-pound sometimes on the rivers where 95% of the fish I'm catching are no bigger than 13 inches.
Yeah. But that comes back to what we always talk about on our podcast, and that's confidence. You have confidence in that setup. That's what 30,000 smallmouth. I mean, that's pretty good confidence builder. Yeah.
And, the other thing, I wanted to, and it's interesting, and most of you are not from Wisconsin, Southeast Wisconsin. I do my own event, and I'm not plugging it for this reason, called Smallie Night Out, which some think is the best evening smallmouth event in the country. But what's pretty cool is I don't charge very much, but everybody that walks through the door is going to get one of each of the 3 things that I caught 4,895 river smallmouth on. Wow. They're not going to get like something that's not the right color. They're going to get a 2.8 Kitech fat swing. They're going to get a package of the Slim Swims by Z-Man, and they're going to get a teeny wee crawfish. So I'll segue right into my other couple of really good presentations. And now these are both, for those of you that are listening and watching, I'm going to talk both rivers and big water. I mean, Lake Michigan, Green Bay. I've got a 18.5-foot Yark craft with a 200 Pro XS that handles the water up there great. I also fish out of my Jackson, Coosa FDs up there. And I spent a lot of time, and I have to tell you, my philosophy is, and Brad and Jay might agree or disagree. My philosophy has been, and it goes back to the teeny wee crawfish, and that is small for me catches everything. And about 2019, I was turned on to the Kitech Fat Swing Impact by the bait shop up in Sturgeon Bay. And they're saying, oh, Bill, the 3.3 and the 3.8. So I bought the 3.3 and the 3.8. Slowly, I figured out the 3.3 was working better than the 3.8. Again, smaller. Now, for the last couple of years, almost exclusively, I'm using the 2.8 Kitech Fat Swing Impact. And I'm using it in a variety of colors. This happens to be ale white. The colors I like are darker on the top, lighter on the bottom. And there's about 7. I mean, they make a lot of colors that match, that mimic that. Phenomenal. And it works. The little bit of a negative is they're very fragile. And they if you catch 4 or 5 fish, you are a hero. But they work great.
How are you rigging them? What kind of hook are you?
That.
Yeah, I'm rigging them with a swim type jig, and I'm swimming them as slow and steady as I possibly can swim them. And you guys are, because you're both good fishermen, you're jumping ahead of me, not in a good way. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, because we're going to get into, and I didn't bring a package of the Z-Man TRD to talk a little bit about the Ned rig, but I use jigs from Z-Man, and I use jigs from Gopher Tackle. And I will tell you that Gopher Tackle, I have a smallmouth email group, and quite honestly, if there's anyone listening that wants to be on my group, we have some interesting discounts too, but smalleycentral@gmail.com. You're welcome to have people from mostly Wisconsin and Illinois, but around the country. And so I have 1,000 people in my group. And
would you like me to put that up, Brad?
What?
Would you like me to put up smalleycentral@gmail.com?
Sure. That would be great.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please. And I was going to say that in 2008, it was the next year after I began using the Kalin's lunker grub with tremendous success. And one of my guys said, Bill, you've got to try the Gopher Tackle Big John's jig. Note, everybody, the eyelet is flush, 45 degrees, and what you've got is a 2/0 hook. This is a 1/16. This is the 3/32. And, wow. And the sad thing, and if my friend Matt Straw would always talk about these in his articles, and I gave away thousands of samples. And sadly, this son that was running it couldn't handle it. They went out of business. But the positive is that Stacy and Ron from Northwest Iowa bought it 2 years ago. And I have to tell you, the quality is there. All the products are there. So I'm using not as much on the 2.8 because it's the hook shank just slightly long at the 2/0 hook. But I'm using it. I am using it on the Kitech. I am using it on the Z-Man Slim Swims. And Gopher Tackle makes a variety. They've got the patent on the name mushroom head. So when you're doing Ned rigs and you're swimming smaller swim baits, I use them all the time. And of course, I use the Z-Man, like the fish eyes.
Right.
I use, this is phenomenal, for Ned rig, the Ned locks with the keeper on the hook. I had them for a year or so before I ever used them. They've got a thicker hook. You can use them for swim baits or the Ned rig. And of course, their little shrooms, finesse. And a little bit of a negative with the shrooms. And that's why, and Brad, you've been in Door County. Jay, you've been in Door County. I talked about the rods I use on rivers. If you guys would have asked me, and I started using the Ned rig, jumping around a little bit, and I forgot to bring up from my area the Z-Man TRD, finesse TRD, the little cigarette shaped lure. And Brad's probably got one there.
Yeah, I'll get you.
Yeah, Brad has them.
But I first used the Ned rig in 2016, had phenomenal success with it right away. Have kept some track of it. I'm at 5,000 or 6,000 smallmouth on the Ned rig alone. I like both of these. The Gopher jigs and the Z-Man jigs are just great for whether you're using the little tube Z, their little 2+ inch tube, or the TRD. It works just great. So, the Ned rig is another one of those literally few presentations that I use. I want to open up a package and show you something I began using middle of the year 2021. This is the Z-Man Slim Swims.
Okay.
It's made out of their Elastex, Jay. This thing is the durability is beyond ridiculous.
Yes.
Last year on Southeast Wisconsin River, I took the little one of these 2.5 inch ones off at 82 smallmouth.
Jeez.
And I could have kept going, but I changed colors. And they're phenomenal. You spend your $5 or $6 on a package, that may be all you need. But I've had great luck on the rivers with the 2.5 Slim Swims by Z-Man, and up in Door County on the bigger water, I've gone with the 3-inch version, and I've had good luck with that. So we've now talked about the Rebel. There you go. There's the TRD. Probably that's could be the Deal. It could be Gobi Bryant.
Yeah, this is smelt silver with the white bottom.
Right, and I have to tell you, some of the two-tone colors are phenomenal. But if I told you, and I just mentioned, Brad, while you were gone, the vast majority of my Ned rig smallmouth, rivers or up in Sturgeon Bay, have been on one color, about 98%. It is their top-selling color, green pumpkin goby.
Green pumpkin goby.
And green pumpkin goby, I'd say 98% of the 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 smallmouth I've caught on the Ned rig have come on green pumpkin goby. I don't want to go through all the colors. You should just try them. You should try them. So now I've talked about the Rebel teeny wee crawfish. I've talked about the Kitech 2.8 fat swing impact and probably the 3.3. I've talked about the Z-Man 2.5 and 3-inch Slim Swims. I also can't not mention the lure that has been great for me up in Sturgeon Bay and on rivers for a long, long time, and that's the Kalin's lunker grub. It comes 3, 4, and 5 inch. I've liked the 4-inch everywhere. This is Blue Pearl Salt and Pepper, guys.
Okay.
Has been phenomenal on rivers. And up in Sturgeon Bay, before my wife and I had our little house up there that we bought in 2015, I used to only fish up there in May and June. And you can believe me or not, but In May and June of 2014, just May and June, for every 8 hours on the water up there, and it's not the way it is anymore, I was averaging 46 smallmouth. So in May and June of 2014, I caught 714 smallmouth. And if you can believe it, every single one of them was on the smoke, salt, and pepper. And it was rigged. You rig them right down the center and use the little seam and bring it right out the back. It was right on a gopher jig. And I will tell you, you've noticed something about the colors that I've shown you. I haven't shown you any variety. I've shown you chartreuse. And I will tell you that in 2017, I thought, I wonder if a little brighter color, whether it be the Ned rig, swimming something, whatever, might help. I will tell you that I have not looked back. And Brad, I will tell you that your friend and freshwater Hall of Famer, Dale Storshine, not that we ever talked about this, we both figured it out ourselves. He uses chartreuse jigs. So
okay, we have a question here.
Yeah.
It's from Mark Zacher Fishing. He said the green pumpkin goby with the Ned head, you're fishing it close to the bottom, aren't you?
I'm fishing it right on the bottom. And I'm fishing it with almost no movement.
You can't. This is green pumpkin goby. It has some purple in it.
Right.
And the gold.
Right.
And it's just super hard to see on the screen.
It is.
And this is a big TRD. This is the big one. It's not the finesse, but I do use them because I cut them in half.
Yeah, and you can, when I do my talks, and I'm doing a couple talks, the Ned rig and other top smallie presentations, the big TRD can be cut, and they've got a bigger one with tentacles that can be cut to make it like 2 3/4 or 3. Again, I believe small catches everything, and with the Ned rig, literally on my telephone in 2018, it was funny because I had Chase Parsons and Gary Parsons, the champion walleye guys, up there pre-fishing for the Sturgeon Bay Open. They're behind me. They ended up doing great, to be honest with you, but they sat back there and watched me catch quite a few 4 to 5+ pound fish. And I was my phone rang, and I had a $300 St. Croix rod and a $200 reel. The Ned rig was sitting out there with no movement. Thank God I heard the rod going out the back of the boat. To this day, if I don't turn around, but if I'm watching it and I don't touch it, every time I pick up the rod, I'm anticipating I might have a smallmouth, because as little movement as possible, a little twitch once in a while. But the idea is, guys, with the Elastec product, that little TRD that Brad showed you, it sticks up off the bottom like a little weenie. Yeah. This isn't a TRD, but it sticks up off the bottom, and the current moves it. A river current moves it. Ned rig's a little tougher in rivers because even with the small jigs, you lose a lot of jigs because they get hooked up in the rocks. So I want to just real quick, one more. I talked about.
We have a comment I'd like to put in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cajun Rob said that he loves the Kalin's grub. He fished a lot of tournaments in East Tennessee, and he said he catches most of his smallmouth bass on those Kalin's grubs.
Well, there was a guide who at the time was the top guide in Door County, Tim DeWittiak. And Tim owned the bait shop. And Jay, you would know who Tim is. On one rainy day, probably 15 years ago, when he was still real involved with all of this, he and I sat there and argued. First of all, we argued 4-inch or 5-inch. He likes the 5-inch. I like the 4-inch. But the other thing we agreed on is when I say swimming it as slow as possible and steady, how slow is slow? Slow is if you tick the bottom, you speed it up a hair. That's how slow I'm talking about. I'm talking about with the Kitech. I'm talking about with the Kalins. And amazingly, I have a diagram in my talks that shows 4 ways to do a Ned rig. The last one is taking a net, just the TRD, and swimming it like you do the other things I talked about. And I got to tell you, I never thought it would work. But, and here's the old story about when, you say, well, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out, or you don't have to be a brain surgeon. Well, the last 21 years of my career, I ran the Alumni Association for the Medical College of Wisconsin and Marquette Medical, which was the predecessor. And one of my friends, who is a brain surgeon, I introduced him to the Ned rig, and he goes, Bill, when I'm pedaling along in my kayak, I just hold the rod out there and I get fish. So a brain surgeon told me that you can swim a TRD like the other things and catch fish. I believed him. Last thing I'm going to mention, quite honestly.
All our listeners, I don't want to interrupt you. All our listeners should put that on for their wives when they take them fishing.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, I have to tell you, my wife, Becky, doesn't fish a lot. She virtually in these beautiful Yarcraft boats I have, she's been out in the last 5 years in them twice. She enjoys, though, what she calls walking and waiting. And, but I had her out July 4th about 5 years ago, and she picked up the Ned rig, was so easy with the TRD. She did quite well. And I joke about this, but Bassmasters had was it 4 years ago, 2019, they had, or it was MLF, had their tournament up there. And my wife and I were in a location, and in an hour and a half, we did 19 smallmouth, which was and again, he's the greatest bass guy in the world. And I'm sure I've never met him, but Kevin Van Dam had a challenging time. But I know his total for his 2 days was 19 fish. And I joked to Becky and I said, the best bass fisherman in the world caught the same number of fish we just did. But that's the Ned rig's very easy. And I will tell you, up in Door County, the fishing's not what it was 7-8 years ago. It's still, you can still have your personal best and have some incredible fish, but you have to work a little harder at it. And one of the things that I've done, I used to be all, as you guys would know, if I'm fishing May and June, I'm all shallow water, no bed fishing, not one, never bed fish. But in shallow. But when we got our place, I had said, I got to learn how to do more than just fish in 2 to 8 feet of water. So first of all, the Ned rig, the next year after we got our place, that helped a lot because I could get out in 15, 20 feet of water with the Ned rig and have some success in the summer when it's a lot tougher. Well, the other thing that in all the talks I've done, I always have a picture of a tube and I go, they can be really good. I just don't use them a lot. Well, that was until 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, I had a very incredible, and this is already when the fishery is starting, but, I'm out at a certain location in 2025, a little deeper water, not much deeper. I don't like to go much deeper for the safety of the fish. But there was a guy, a tournament guy, very nice. And I could, what you hate? You hate it when the guy up there is catching fish and you're not. So I nicely putted over. No one else was around. It was a weekday. It was a Wednesday or a Thursday. And it was like the day after Election Day, so November 2nd or 3rd. And I just nicely introduced myself. Hey, I said, you're doing better than me. What are you using? I'm using a tube, a 2.5-inch tube. Oh, I go, I got something. I started doing better. And then I ran into him on a Friday at the launch, and he said, hey, this color really worked. So I got the color. And the next 3 days, 16 hours of total fishing, 52 smallmouth, 32 fish between 4 and 7 pounds, 4 ounces.
7.
And this is, again, if someone is on my group, I've got some discounts. This is a product I don't need discounts because Right Bite Bait out of Batesville, Arkansas makes their own product on their website. A package of 10 of these tubes is $2.99. They get repackaged at places and the price doubles. They also make the insert jigs, 10 for $2.99.
Wow.
And I will tell you that using this is the medium light extra fast, but a 6'10" medium extra fast Legend X with a Daiwa Tatula reel with our friend Dale Stroshine 30 feet away with clients. I hooked into that afternoon my personal best at 7 pounds 4 ounces on the Boga grip, and 46-degree water temp. I'm hustling so hard, the picture is terrible. I quickly measured it. It was 21 and a half, not a monster length. This thing was a monster, and I'm in the front of the boat, and I'm letting it out over the boat. And Brad, Dale is literally 7 feet away, and he's going, Bill, I wanted to see it. And then his comment was, and I said, Dale, 7.4 on the Boga grip. And all he said was, great fish. Boga grip has, for you who don't know it, 3,500 world records. So anyways, I got this set up. The next morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm out. Same rod, same reel, same beat up tube. And I do my number 2 all time. This was an inch shorter, 20 and a half, 6 pounds, 12 ounces. And at that point, I yanked that tube off and I've saved it for posterity.
Great.
So anyways, the point being is there's a story that you can still have some incredible fish up there. But the tubes in that, 10 to 15, 20, 25 feet of water for me has truly been now one of my go-tos. So now here we go, guys. You take 11,000, let's say add in a couple little lakes, about 12,000 lake smallmouth, over 18,000 river smallmouth, and accept literally for a handful of fish, you're talking the Kalin's lunker grub, you're talking the teeny wee crawfish, the last few years, the Kitech 2.8 and 3.3 probably, and you're talking the Z-Man Slim Swims and the TRD for the Ned rig and their little Tube Z for the Ned rig. That, folks, is it. And you know what? My kayak, I got a lot of room for my camera, my water, my towels, my food, everything else, because I'm taking almost nothing with me. I'm very fortunate to be involved with Yarcraft and Mercury, and I was fortunate before that to be involved with Crestliner. And I had a 2017 Raptor that had space for 6 Plano boxes under the passenger console. I put 6 Plano boxes in there in April. I took 6 Plano boxes out in November. I never touched those Plano boxes in between. They had crankbaits, jerkbaits, everything else, because for years I used these few things and they just worked great for me. And I just, for any of you that want to be on my Smalley group, I communicate quite a bit. I let people know, what I'm having success with. It's usually these things, and bits of information. So, there you kind of have it, Jay. We did it a little faster than we probably did a year and a half, 2 years ago, but I try to keep it simple because it makes it easier for me. It makes it easier because I get to the things that work, and then I can share that information. And I have to tell you, in all my years of doing talks, I've had one person email me, and they were so nice. They go, Bill, I tried that Kalin's. It really didn't work very well for me. And so I emailed back, I go, well, how did you fish it? He said, well, I was bouncing it on the bottom. I go, no. I go, steady and slow as you can. So he emailed me back, oh, it works great. So, So I figure if I give out all this advice and I don't get many people saying these things don't work, then I guess I feel good about it. So
how does new product affect you in fishing? If, say, Z-Man came out with the leech, I have a package of leech here, made me think about, why wouldn't you try this on a Ned rig?
Well, I'll tell you, I get the one nice thing about having my group, and my group is, it's an interesting group. It's probably age-wise, I'd say 35 to maybe 80 years old. There's guys that are nut smallmouth people, and there's guys that are weekend, like you guys have talked about. But I get comments back. Hey, Bill, have you tried this? And you know what? I appreciate it. I try to remember it, but I sometimes feel again, not that this is important, but I can tell you, and I just, for the fun of it, put this together based on the last 2 years. My average 2 years ago, 2021, my river wading, my average hours per outing was 3.5. My average number of fish per those 3.5 hours was 46 fish. I was averaging 13 smallies per hour. Okay, this last year, 182 hours of wading, a 3-hour average per trip. I was averaging 14 smallmouth per hour or 42 and a half per time out. So I'm thinking, how, with the things that I use, how much better can I do? My best 5 hours this year in the water with waders was 167 smallmouth. And an attorney friend who has a $100,000+ Vexus, who I have now turned on to wade fishing. I don't know if he even uses his boat much. He was so happy to tell me, Bill, I was out 6 hours the other day. I did 176 smallmouth. Most of them came on the swims. So the number of 50, 60, 80, 90, 100 fish days waiting, and again, not that, my biggest smallmouth in the river this year was 4.25 pounds in one of my Jackson kayaks. Farther up the river, I normally fish. My biggest wading smallmouth this year, and in quite a few years on the teeny wee crawfish, was probably 3.5 to 4 in current. And it's fun, but on the rivers, at least the rivers in Southwest and Southeast Wisconsin, many more of those 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-inch fish. This isn't like the Susquehanna or the Juanita, some of those rivers out east where you're going to get some really big fish. But still, you look at those numbers per hour compared to my Door County numbers per hour this year at 4, and the year before that, 3. Not that it's not nice to get, some bigger fish, but I like action. And so I guess it's pretty convenient to get in my car and drive, 25, 30 miles to a southeast Wisconsin river, or be in southwest Wisconsin where my wife has a little unheated type cabin where I can go out and, 30, 40, 50 fish in a few hours. So I'm fortunate that I can fish both types of water. And I'm happy that I've been able to use these lures. And Brad, to your suggestion, if something looks pretty simple and Z-Man has some phenomenal additional lures, but you take, for example, the hula grub, which is got the tentacles. I would think if that is the same length as the TRD, but with the tentacles, I'm thinking this has got to be better. You know what? Quite a few days, it's the TRD has done better for me.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Again, it goes to how much stuff do I want to have?
Right.
That's sort of, if I in my boat have a small duffel bag with a bunch of TRDs and stuff, and I have the Kitechs in another one. I got the Kalins in another one. I got my boxes with my jigs. That's really, I don't take up even a lot of room in the front of my boat. And it's so nice to not have, I do it. I'm doing a talk. They have an event in Wisconsin at the Big Alliance Center. It's the largest paddle event in the United States called Canoecopia. And I've spoken there the last 14 years, and I'll be there this year doing kayak fishing. Let's get started. Well, I follow that KISS, keep it simple, Schultz, when I'm doing my talks, because I'd rather have people start off and get things that work, a kayak that will work, a paddle that's appropriate. Then you start adding stuff once you learn a little bit. So, it's, and the other thing, I just, for anyone listening, if you do email me and you have questions, I have to say that I am awfully good at getting back with answers. And, and even those that come to my talks, I do something that no other speaker I've ever seen does. Years ago, it used to be copies. Now, Brad, if you would come to my talk and want to learn about this or that, you can sit there and enjoy, and you just email me and I'll email you a PDF of my entire talk.
Oh, wow.
Meaning you don't have to take notes.
Yeah.
And, it's great because people enjoy that because it gives them a reference, because I rattle all this stuff, information off because I've been doing it so long and using it so long, but, not everyone's going to remember it hearing it once.
Or you say something at the beginning and that's what sticks, and then they're like, what else did he talk about? How can I catch more fish?
That's exactly right, Brad. And I was going to say for you, what I would like you to do is, if you are coming up to fish with Dale, let me know.
Okay.
Simply because it might be fun to get together for lunch, or you can come out and see the Lake Michigan side. But
I love Door County. The readers of Bassin Magazine have read several stories. I visited Kenna Lighthouse.
Yep.
And took the tractor ride over there. That's some amazing history on that.
Well, I want to tell you. You mentioned something that I've got to, having kayaked and boated around Kenna Island many, many times. I want to tell everybody why, when you're on big water with big smallies, why, for example, the Ned locks with the heavier hook might be a little more appropriate than the shrooms. In middle of August of 2018, if you would have said, Bill, tell me what the ideal Ned rig rod is, I said, oh, here it is. I've got 4 of them right here. It's a 6'10", medium light, extra fast. Well, no more up there. It still will work, but it's terrible. I don't lose fish when using one hook, So I'm out there on the Lake Michigan side. Brad, I lost, whether they jumped, whether the little shrooms jig bent. I was not getting it into the lip with the medium light with those big 5+ pound fish. So needless to say, beginning in 2019, my only rod's up there. This is Charlie, our newest cat. I use the same length, but in a medium extra fast. And for you rod files, I will tell you that I, like everybody, I have like 6, 7, 8 rods all rigged in my boat, leaning up on the back platform. I don't even hardly use my rod locker. But as we approached number 25,000, I promised St. Croix, I'll catch number 25,000 on the brand new Victory rod. 7.3 medium extra fast, phenomenal all around rod. But I only had one because that's all I could get. I had to change lures 5, 6 times. I hated it, but I caught number 25,000 on the Victory 7.3 medium light extra fast. And
that's awesome.
As I approached number 30,000, they had just come out with the redesigned Legend Tournament bass. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, I'll do 30,000 on that. And on October 10th, I hit the water in the morning needing one fish for 30,000. Wow. And I'm thinking, oh God, is it going to be like 1 pound, 2 pounds? So I go out in about 20 feet of water off an island out off of Sister Bay. And thankfully, number 30,000 with 3.5 or 3.75. And so, it's what it is. But up there in the big water, I'm using medium extra fast. And I really, really like their 7.3 medium extra fast in the Victory and the Legend bass. The reason I'm moving around is I got open jigs here and a teeny wee crawfish with a 7-month-old cat that would probably, I'm going to put the teeny wee crawfish back in the little bag. So, but yeah, it's fun, guys. And I'll tell you, here's my suggestion for all you guys who are getting older. Start keeping track of your fish. When I first started doing it, it didn't matter, but now it's good for my old mind.
Right.
Yes. Well, do you have any shout outs you'd like to do, Bill?
No, I mean, I've talked about the lures I use. And quite honestly, I will tell you, and I really like this, how this has worked out over the years. Nothing that I've told you about was given to me. And then they said, you should try this, Bill, and then tell people about it. Everything I've talked about is something that I tried, had phenomenal success with before I ever shared the information with my group at a talk or on a podcast or in an article, because that kind of goes to my credibility. I don't want to tell someone about something and then have them go, what the heck? This works like it doesn't work well at all. So, the Z-Man products, the Kitech, the Right Bait, the Rebel Teeny Wee Crawfish, and obviously in all the series, I'm pretty much actually, even with my sink, I'm pushing Charlie, our cat. He's up here with me. Okay, Charlie, here. This is Charlie. Isn't he a pretty little guy? Okay, Charlie, buddy. We have 3 other cats, and they aren't bothering me. I was going to say with the St. Croix rods, I really, if you look at all the rods I have, they're all in that 6'10", 7-foot medium light extra fast, or that 7 to 7.3 medium extra fast, because those are the actions and the lengths that work really well for me with what I use. I have one bait caster just in case I ever decide to throw a Alabama rig. If I did, it would have like I'd probably put the Slim Swims on it or the Kalins or something. But I just, I throw it. I know a lot of guys swear by it. I just think it's almost too complicated. I like simple.
It also will wear you out.
Coming on.
Hey, listen, I already got my right arm, all those thousands of racquetball matches, all that swimming, all the casting. It's in great shape. It's my left rotator cuff that I got a slight tear in. So I don't need to throw anything heavier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Bill, we certainly do appreciate you coming on and sharing your vast knowledge of smallmouth bass. And I'm sure Brad will agree with me there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Well, I appreciate you guys letting me kind of, rattle on here, and hopefully your viewers will get some information. And please, if you got questions, love to hear from you. And if you want to, and I was going to say one more thing, and this is my health related thing. If anybody comes to my talks, anyone sees my pictures, going back about 12 to 13 years, every picture you see me in, I'm wearing sun gloves. I get them from Glacier Glove. We got a great discount with them. The reason is and also I'm a dermatologist dream. They should use a picture of me in their talks. If I hat, buff, polarized glasses, long sleeve shirt, long sleeve, long legged pants. And I cover my hands because I figure you get to be more senior, our hands, everything's gotten way too much sun. I think it makes a lot of difference.
Anglers out there listening, the Glacier Glove, Esmeralda glove is the glove to have.
Yeah. In fact, I'm trying to think if this is the Isle Morada here. the Almirada and the Abaco Bay are the two main ones that I wear. The reason these are phenomenal colors, but I have to tell you, they've just come out. They got some new ones coming out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It is a great glove, and I do have a pretty nice big discount on the Glacier gloves. And I love them.
I love them too. That's my glove.
Yeah,
That's my glove.
Brad, I'm glad you're wearing them. If they go on the Glacier Glove site, they'll probably see my picture holding up a big smallmouth with. And the other thing is, from a kayaking standpoint, I've been involved for quite a long time with Jackson Kayak and Bending Branches paddles. Glacier Glove makes their fly fishing glove called the Stripper Fighting Glove. It is a great kayak glove because it's got a little extra material in the palm. You still get the 50 SPF. That's what I wear when I kayak. And even if you don't fish, it's a great kayak glove.
Excellent.
Yeah. Great.
We're way over, Bill. Thank you so much. Thank you. This is awesome.
Well, Brad and Jay, I really appreciate you guys letting me come on again, and I enjoyed it. And Brad, I look forward to meeting you in person.
Yes, sir.
Up in Sturgeon Bay.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bill. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to the Bassin Magazine podcast. Bassin Magazine, guys. Bassin Magazine is the official magazine of the Weekend Angler. And guys, it's Wednesday. Make your plans tonight. Get out there this weekend. You only get to do this once.
Yep, life's short. Fish.
And stick around. I'm going to end the podcast with that. We'd like to talk to you for a couple minutes after we're done.